Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're looking at something that's, well, it's a quiet but really critical revolution happening just behind the scenes of how our cities are designed and managed. It's all about a much needed update to how we train the very people who build the world around us.
Okay, let's just dive right into this question. Our cities, they're becoming these incredibly complex, data-rich systems. But here's the problem. The training for urban planners and designers, it often hasn't caught up. And this gap, it has huge consequences for how our future cities are going to function and whether they'll actually be equitable, resilient, and responsive to what we all need. So, the very first hurdle we have to talk about is this massive gap in how we even think about cities. The old mindset is just fundamentally out of sync with what a 21st century city really demands. You see, for decades, the way we did things was to train specialists. You'd have a policy expert over here, a data scientist over there. But today's urban problems, things like climate resilience or housing affordability, they just don't fit into those neat little boxes. They require what the source material calls convergent experts, people who can hold the whole complex problem in their head at once. And, this quote from the source material, it just hits the nail on the head. Without that true integration, you don't actually have a new science of cities. You just have, as it says, a polite arrangement of specialists. Basically, different experts talking past each other in the same room. The goal is to move way beyond that. Okay, so that's one part of the mindset shift. The other big one is moving away from planning based on, well, a practitioner's gut feelings or what worked on a project 10 years ago. The new approach demands scientific reasoning, grounded in hard data, in real evidence that can actually stand up to scrutiny. It's about building knowledge, not just relying on intuition. And this new scientific approach, it's built on some absolutely incredible discoveries, like urban scaling laws. These show us that cities, no matter where they are in the world, aren't random at all. They follow these deep, predictable mathematical principles, almost like laws of physics. So get this, as a city's population doubles, things like innovation, which we can measure by the number of patents filed, they don't just double, they more than double. This is called superlinear scaling. It's actual scientific proof that density, when it's done right, really does fuel creativity and economic growth. So, okay, the thinking is outdated, but the problem goes even deeper than that. The way planners actually work and the way they're taught to work is also falling dangerously behind the times. Think about it. Planners were traditionally taught to create these static master plans, right? A fixed blueprint for the next 20 years. But cities aren't static. They're living, breathing, adaptive systems. They need dynamic management tools, like a digital twin of the city that can model changes and adapt in real time. And this is where it gets really interesting, because it forces us to completely rethink the whole point of urban planning. It's no longer about producing some final, dusty document. It's about engineering a continuous, learning process that helps the city evolve intelligently. And of course, this has to start right in the classroom. You know that old model, right? The professor stands at the front and just dictates their grand vision to the students. Well, that's obsolete. The new model is a facilitation studio, where the instructor acts more like a guide, helping students navigate real, messy, complex urban problems for themselves. Okay, so we've got these huge gaps in thinking and in practice. The big question is, how on earth do we fix this? How do we build this new generation of city makers? Well, the source material proposes a really comprehensive solution. It's called the Convergent Faculty Competency Framework. And the core idea is honestly brilliant. Instead of just focusing on retraining the students, you start by retraining the educators themselves. You give them the skills to teach this whole new way of thinking. All right, so let's actually dive into this framework. What does it look like? Well, it builds a totally new toolkit for the modern urbanist, and it's all organized around 6 core competencies. This is basically the roadmap, right? 6 essential domains of knowledge and skill that every modern urbanist needs to have. We're going to touch on a few key ones, starting from the theoretical foundation and working our way all the way to hands-on stuff like urban AI. So first things first, you need that deep theoretical grounding. You have to understand the physics of how cities actually work as complex systems. And this isn't just some academic exercise. This is the fundamental science that prevents you from making terrible assumptions with your data later on. Okay, next up, data. You have to be a master at acquiring real-time data about the city. And that means understanding everything from Internet of Things sensors and satellite imagery, all the way to the really, really crucial ethics of data ownership, surveillance, and community consent. So once you have all that data, you've got to know what to do with it. That's where domains 3 and 4, big data management and urban computing, come in. But it all leads here to domain 5, which is about actually building with that data. A modern urbanist has to be able to create the real tools that planners use, like a live dashboard that tracks heat stress in a neighborhood, or a simulation of a new transit line.
And finally, we get to the cutting edge, AI. The sixth domain is all about harnessing the power of generative intelligence for urban design. But, and this is a huge but, it means doing so responsibly, constantly auditing for algorithmic bias and being critical of what an AI spits out to make sure it makes real-world sense. So I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds a little academic, right? All about university courses and what professors are doing. But this transformation, it has a direct, and I mean profound, impact on your everyday life. So here's the bottom line. The people designing everything, your transport systems, your housing policies, your public spaces, they absolutely need this new integrated skill set. Honestly, whether our future cities are fair, efficient, and sustainable, it all comes down to getting this educational transformation right. And that really leaves us with a final provocative thought. Because this whole shift changes what we as citizens should be demanding. It's not enough anymore to just ask to see the static blueprint, the plan. The real question, the one we should all be asking, is this: can we see the living, learning system that will manage our city's future?